Berkeley, major public university, there's a bunch of words up there, but it says providing long-term societal benefit. No surprise, right? Providing long-term societal benefit has been our mission forever. And then there's 3 ways of achieving that: teaching, research, and public service. And you still think like, well, okay, I don't see what the startups are, right? Teaching, I get. Research, I get. Yeah, this is the bedrock of the university. And public service, okay. But then if you look at the mission statement, and yes, I invite you to Google it, it actually says part of public service is translating scientific discoveries for the benefit of, it literally says California, for the benefit of Californians and the nation, right? I mean, so this is baked in, from the beginning. The mission is we're doing the teaching, we're doing the research, but really the next step is get it out, right? And the many ways, you can license it and you can sell it to different companies, but many times it's starting a company is the way to get it out of the institution.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Ignite podcast. Today we're delighted to be speaking with Darren Cooke. He's Interim Chief Innovation and Entrepreneurship Officer at UC Berkeley. He's been instrumental in fostering life sciences entrepreneurship through his leadership at that center and teaching at the House School of Business. Go Bears. He has extensive experience. This man's roles as an investor, attorney, engineer, and we're glad to have him today. Darren, thanks so much for joining.
Awesome. Thank you, Brian. It's my pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you. I'd love to, kick it off by asking you about your journey into life sciences and entrepreneurship at Haas. And, you started obviously in mechanical engineering, but yeah, I would love to get that kind of backstory.
Yeah, no, of course. Yeah, so I was a grad student in mechanical engineering at UC Berkeley, Tony Keaveney's orthopedic biomechanics lab back in early mid-90s, realizing that's not what I really wanted to do. And so it just happened that I was lucky. I worked 1 year as a mechanical engineer, despite having 2 degrees in it. I guess the spouse of a friend was a patent attorney at a big law firm, and I didn't even know that engineers could go into law. That was the first I'd heard of it. And the more I looked into it, I thought, that sounds cool, right? And so I left Berkeley to go to law school. So I was actually in the lab on a Friday afternoon, left UC Berkeley, flew to New York over the weekend, and started Columbia Law School the next Monday.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah.
But then, what was it that intrigued you about law? I mean, it's quite the pivot in your career. You're somewhere in your 20s, obviously. I had the exact same experience on Wall Street. I worked really hard to get there and passed CFA. And I was like, after about a year, I was like, I don't think I want to do this. So I had to pivot hard, but didn't go to law school. So what was it about law that really attracted you?
I think back at the time, what attracted me was the idea that, so what I was doing at Berkeley was looking at mechanical stresses in the facial skeleton. I mean, this was like very focused, right? So this is the orthopedic biomechanics research, and that's all I thought about. And what I learned from my friend's wife was that, she was thinking about different tech every day. She was learning about different things. She was a patent attorney, right? So she's drafting and prosecuting patents. I thought, well, that's awesome, right? You could do something different every day and learn about a different tech every day and really get into it and then move on to something else. So at least at the beginning, that's what I thought was cool. By the time I was done with law school, I was kind of interested in other things, and I became a patent litigator, which, is the area of law where you represent. In patent law, it's typically one company suing another company, right? So it's that level of litigation. You represent a patent holder or a alleged infringer in a big high stakes litigation, and I did that for 6 years. So after law school, loved it. So it turned out it was a bit too much. I think a lot of big law firm associates conclude that this is not sustainable for a lifestyle for many of us. And so I was married. My wife was also a big law firm associate, right? And so we're like, we got to do something different. And so we both around the same time when our daughter was being born, got what we call in-house jobs. And so you go from a big firm to, I went to Bio-Rad Laboratories, maker of life science research tools and clinical diagnostics, and I was there for 10 years. It was fantastic. Oh. So I ran the IP department for the tools business.
Yeah, it's funny how careers in life take lots of twists and turns, and the biomechanical background informs the patent law. And then going in-house, I would imagine instead of working 80-hour weeks, you're working 40, 50-hour weeks. It's a lot more sustainable with kids and having a family.
It was great. Yeah, it really was. 9 to 5, great company, great coworkers. There was a reason I was there for 10 years because it was a really nice place to be.
Yeah.
But
If I wasn't running a venture capital firm, I'd still be at Microsoft, probably just working 9 to 5, and then somehow you got involved back with Berkeley again via the SkyDeck on the BioTrack. Tell us about that.
yeah, so I left Bio-Rad in 2015 with the, basically a one sentence mission statement: work with startups. And the reason was because in my role at Bio-Rad, we looked at a lot of startups. We acquired some of them. I was responsible for integrating their IP. And what was intriguing is that the companies that we were looking at and sometimes acquiring were really, frankly, more exciting and more interesting and more youthful than the company I was working with. I thought, yeah, I'd rather be working with them day to day. So when I left in 2015, I literally started a law practice in my basement. And then the idea was, now I'm going to get startup clients and represent them before university tech transfer offices and give work in freedom to operate and patentability opinions and that kind of thing, just basically IP stuff. What it meant is, because I live pretty close to UC Berkeley, and of course I was a student there, is that I started going to every event possible. And this is one of those things where just one thing led to another, right? I just happened to make connections at events, and then happened to be invited to be an industry mentor for a Berkeley faculty team going through this program called iCore. This is early on. I had just left Bio-Rad when all this sort of started snowballing.
Yeah, what year is this?
This was, so 2016 was when I started getting more involved with. There was definitely a lean year, and this, I think, advice I give. I talk to a lot of people who are thinking about making a career transition or intrigued by it, and many of them see that I did it, and they're wondering how it happened. And looking back, there's no real magic to it other than just showing up, being positive and eager to help, and
that's basically it. Yeah,
meet people, right? And that's
people ask me. I remember when I switched from sales to marketing. People are like, "How'd you become a marketer?"
Yeah, exactly.
And then I went from marketing to product. How'd you become a product manager? And then when I made the switch to venture capital, obviously, now everyone's like, "How'd you do that?" And I think it's like what you said, which is just showing up and doing the work and being available and being helpful. Taking on little projects here and there. And then it slowly accretes over time. People kind of expect that you could just apply to jobs and magically somebody's just going to hand you the golden key. You have to show up and actually do the work. And that's the only way to actually know if you like what you're doing.
Yeah, agreed. Other advice, I think we're on the same page on this, is that, number one, 100% reliable. You have to do what you say you're going to do, even if it's just a volunteer thing. Right. And number two, you don't want to have an angle. So I see a lot of people who are volunteering, but they're really doing it because they're looking for something else somehow. But I think, and people can smell that from the next room.
Yeah.
If you're just interested in the field and you're interested in being helpful and 100% reliable and absolutely trustworthy, then you get accepted into the group.
I see this all the time on Team Ignite, right? Team Ignite,
exactly.
Big network of thousands of people that ignite startups, and I can smell it from a mile away. Like sometimes people are just super helpful, and they're just like, "Hey, I saw your newsletter, and this company is doing something I'm really excited about. I think I can add value in these ways. Could you connect me to the founder?" 100% of the time, I'm going to do that.
Yeah.
And then the other people will be like, "There's just a random meeting on my calendar. I don't know the person. They're on Team Ignite vaguely. I've never met them." And it's just like one of those fishing expedition kind of meetings for them.
Yep.
Hey, I'm kind of like looking for something new. Like, well, it's just not useful, man.
Yeah.
I think you have to start with like passion and something to offer.
Exactly. All right. Yeah.
So tell us more about some of those experiences at SkyDeck.
Yeah. So I started as an advisor at SkyDeck, taking a step back. Berkeley SkyDeck, UC Berkeley's premier startup accelerator. It's here in downtown Berkeley. We see over 300 startups go through the program every year. So about 50 of them are invested by the fund. So just as a basic background.
Yeah.
And I believe you had Caroline Winnett on this podcast, right? So folks who have tuned into your podcast before know all about it, because I think that's what she talked about. So actually for Caroline's 10th anniversary with the program, I was asked to give a toast and a roast. Last minute, mind you, but very much was like, "Hey, it's Caroline's anniversary party. Can I give a toast and a roast?" I'm like, "Oh gosh, what am I going to do?" Right? Like I got to think of something quick. And so I went back and I literally thought, maybe if I find the first picture I have of Caroline on my phone, And then the last picture, that could be interesting, right? And it turned out it was, because the first picture I had was from 2016, early 2016, from SkyDeck's demo day, where it was so small.
Yeah.
I mean, there must have been 30 people in the room total.
Right.
And Caroline is standing there in front of the East Wing. I remember being awfully excited at the time. This is amazing. But so that was the first picture I had on my phone. The last picture I had was when she's standing on stage at Zellerbach in the most recent demo day, which was a huge event. We had 1,000 people in the room.
Wow.
And that was just 8 years. And so it's the program has really, really grown.
Yeah.
Well, so I joined as an advisor early on, 2016, 2017. When we started the BioTrack in 2018, Caroline, Chan Tang is the general partner of the fund. So Caroline and Chan invited me to run it. And this was just volunteer, just like, showing up and being helpful and running selection committee and corralling the advisor. And so I started the BioTrack back in, I don't know, it must have been batch 5 or 6 or something, but 2018. And then ultimately chaired it for 13 6-month cohorts.
Wow.
Just for fun, actually, because it was enjoyable. But yeah, so that really got me plugged into the Berkeley ecosystem.
What do you think is so enjoyable about helping startups?
Oh gosh, yeah. So they're young, energetic, maybe a bit naive. It's one of those things where they're on the one hand fun to work with, but also there's a lot you can help with, right? So that's it's
especially
exciting.
as you get years and years into it, you're like, okay, I've seen this before,
Yeah.
But yeah, I've had this multiple times now. This situation, I've seen this story, and I can help with this.
Exactly. It's super gratifying. And then when you see some of them grow in a way that you never would have expected, then it's even better, right? You're like, I can't believe I was part of that from the beginning. So a real success story, kind of related to SkyDeck, but it's more from the beginning. When I started the Life Sciences Entrepreneurship Center on the Berkeley campus in 2021, that was the first time I became a full-time University of California employee, was in 2021. Other than that, I was part-time at Haas, part-time at SkyDeck. But what I did first when I started LSAC, we pronounce it LSAC.
What does that stand for?
Yeah, Life Sciences Entrepreneurship Center. And it's funny because it's a center, it's a donor-funded center. UC Regent Mark Robinson and his wife, CEO of 4DMT, a public company here, a spin out of Berkeley, David Kern and his wife, gave a generous donation to start basically a virtual center to support life sciences entrepreneurship on campus. The thought being is that, hey, we have so many great resources, but we have the sense, and they were correct, that they don't really work together, right? I mean, and it wasn't because they didn't want to; it's just they didn't really have the occasion. I mean, they didn't really know each other.
The structure wasn't in place to actually,
yeah,
bring all the cross-domain expertise into one room, so to speak. Yeah,
exactly right. So, what if we had a virtual center, donor-funded virtual center, to help them work together, maximize UC Berkeley's output in biotech startups? That was the idea. So that's what Rich Lyons and I, former dean of the business school, Rich Lyons and I started in 2021. So, and then I've run it ever since. So Rich Lyons was our first chief innovation and entrepreneurship officer for the campus. After he spent 10 years as being dean, he moved into that role and did a ton of good things for Berkeley.
Amazing leader. Yeah.
Right. We have the stats to prove it.
Yeah. Well, first at Haas too, right? Like just the transformation at Haas. Yeah. And then that catapulted him to chancellor of the entire school, which is pretty amazing.
Exactly. Right. So on July 1st, he became UC Berkeley's 13th chancellor.
100
in 150 years, right?
That's amazing.
Yeah,
so that's a long tenure on average. Yeah.
Yeah. So they're typically 10 years.
Wow.
On July 1st, he became the chancellor. And then on July 1st, I inherited his old job. So, that's why I'm interim chief innovation and entrepreneurship officer for the campus. So, But in addition to still running my donor-funded center, which is still putting on programs and building companies, and we have a lot of success stories there. But wait, I had a story looping back. One of the first things that I did in LSAC was did 150, 200 market needs finding interviews. This is what I teach at Haas. So customer discovery, understanding what people are doing, what their needs are, what they wish was reality, that kind of thing.
Is it kind of like in the Steve Blank kind of tradition, getting outside the building? And
it's lean startup. Yeah, customer discovery. It's Steve Blank. lean
Yeah.
startup. This is what I teach at Haas. So what I kept hearing was postdocs, PhD students, bioscience trainees kept saying like, hey, I think I have this, this idea that could be commercializable, but what do I know about business, right? There must be students, MBA students, other students at Haas who could help me.
Yeah.
Like, what do you
Yeah.
do from there, right? So we devised this program called Bio Startup Speed Teaming, where we just put 10 people with ideas, with technical ideas, in a virtual room. We did it online with 10 people with skills, we called it. So typically MBA students. And we just had them meet each other.
This was like during COVID, right? So you're kind of doing
during
everything
COVID, so you kind of had to do it. Let's see, it was a postdoc from the Berkeley labs with a technology, happened to meet a Haas MBA first year MBA student in a 10-minute Zoom meeting, and they hit it off, right? I mean, so they hit it off. They had coffee after the Zoom meeting, and they did the I-Corps program that I teach, and went to SkyDeck and participated in Pad 13. Raised a little bit of money and became a tenant at Baker Labs, which is our biotech incubator space here on campus. They just got a $130 million BARDA grant, which blows me away. Like, wait a minute, you guys met in my Zoom meeting, right? And now look at you. So yeah, super gratifying.
$230 million grant. That sounds outlandish. That's crazy.
Yeah, right. So of course, BARDA is defense, right? So they have a technology for basically poisoning after a disaster. So this is related. This is related to in that field.
That's pretty important. Any other success stories come to mind from SkyDeck and from I-Corp and LSAC? And
I think it highlights what you never know where the success is going to come from. So we had a company that we took on the BioTrack, didn't even come in through the usual channels. This came in through a VC friend of mine who said, hey, this company is too early for him. But he seems like they seem pretty impressive and probably the right stage for SkyDeck. I'm like, yeah, we'll talk to him, I guess. Right? We brought him in separately. They didn't actually ever formally apply to the program, and we took him. And I'll have to admit, at the time, I'm like, this is just another one of these scribes for doctors, right? When and there was a number.
Even I have one of those in my portfolio.
Exactly right. So there was a number at the time. It seems like this is the team that can do it, but it is also kind of a crowded space. We took them, and now, I mean, they've raised $200 million and going gangbusters, right? I mean, so this is standout success on the BioTrack, but I mean, it just highlights you can't predict it, right?
No,
we took
really
it,
hard.
so we did predict it, but I'm not sure I would have seen it coming. So anyway, company called DeepScribe.
So how's that transition been for you to your new role?
So into the Chief Innovation and Entrepreneurship Officer.
Yep.
Yeah. So I mean, frankly, it's been a lot, right? Because I'm still running programs that I started at LSAC. So a lot of them I did unload. The speed teaming event, I'm blown away. I just heard that QB3, an organization on campus, just ran my speed teaming event yesterday, but tripled the size of it. Like, you guys, right? That's fantastic. So they actually arranged 300 10-minute meetings to happen just in the course of 3 hours. And that happened. The most I ever did was 100. Anyway, gratifying to see programs that I've started and has been successful go somewhere else. My I-Corps class is now being totally run at Haas. I don't teach it anymore, but I still have some programs from LSAC, which I run half-time. So a fellows program, a program where we're spinning out companies out of the campus. So we're standing up an entrepreneur in residence program through my center. So that still is happening. And then of course I took on the bigger sort of public facing across campus role of Chief Innovation and Entrepreneurship Officer. So it's been a busy time.
What are some of the kind of the challenges of commercialization, connecting people through entrepreneurship on the campus? And you have Berkeley, world-class Nobel Prize winning departments across the board, especially in the sciences. What are some of those unique challenges of creating programs that really foster these connections and entrepreneurship coming out of the campus?
Well, it's funny, when I came into the role, I thought the biggest challenge was going to be, we have all these silos, right? And fiefdoms and people with their own programs and they don't want to work together. And I was dead wrong. It turned out, no, the ecosystem on the campus is amazing and people do want to work together and they do work together. So because that's worked so well and so efficient, the biggest challenge is actually figuring out what not to do. And we have almost too many ideas. And this has recently been my biggest challenge is how do you say no to things where you say, look, that's a great idea, but we don't have the time and bandwidth to do it. So how do you prioritize what's going to be the most effective? These things take time and money and people to run them. And so you can't do them all. But just getting back to the network. So in 2020, I mentioned Berkeley hired its first chief innovation and entrepreneurship officer, Rich Lyons. One of the first things he did was start this Innovation and Entrepreneurship Council, right? So just a virtual council, virtual center, not a center, but a group where we meet once a month and we talk about things of mutual interest. And we have a shared database where we log what we did over the past month and what we're proud of and what we need help with. And, so it's a big organization of campus leaders who think about innovation and entrepreneurship across the campus. And what blows me away, and when I give this presentation, how many organizations do you think we have on campus? So Berkeley SkyDeck is one of them. Baker Labs is one of them. The Haas Entrepreneurship Program is one of them. Like if you add them all up, how many orgs do we have? We have a couple clubs in there, but most of these are just like centers,
like
organizations.
I bet there's like 1,000.
All right. Well, okay.
Or hundreds. Yeah.
There's 55.
55. Okay.
Okay. All right. Maybe I said it up wrong. You went to the extreme. Sister campuses, even in the UC system, have set up similar I&E councils, and I've checked in with them. I said, "Oh, how many orgs do you have on your council?" And even big places with medical schools have 7. And what happened is that it's translated into big successes. So something that we're very proud of, and I'm sure you've heard of this as well. Is we all know, and certainly people listening to this podcast know what PitchBook is.
Of course.
So PitchBook, the database of
explain it for anybody who doesn't know. Imagine somebody just
so
came in fresh. They
definitive,
don't know anything.
Yeah. Database of early stage companies, private companies, venture-backed startups,
funds, everything. Yeah.
It's an expensive bespoke database, but it's been around for a number of years. Also, for a number of years, they've had this league table of the number of venture-backed startups that are founded by alumni of universities. And since 2015, Berkeley was second to Stanford.
Yeah.
And I think a lot
which hurts. It hurts us.
It does, right? We were second to Stanford until 2023.
Wow.
Where we just eked them out. And then in 2024, we're like this much higher. So
wow.
Yeah. So
what do you attribute that to? Because historically Stanford had a lot of these programs and resources, and they give sabbaticals for students to lead. What is it about Berkeley over the last 10 years that has catapulted Berkeley to the leadership position?
Yeah. So I think it is the synergies between the 55 members of organizations on the campus that are now working together. I think what really synergized stuff was putting this council together and saying, okay, now, so far you've been, 1,000 flowers blooming, but how about we all work together and see what we can do together? And it hasn't been perfect, right? But there has been a lot of new synergies that suddenly and this is one of those things where I think once the ball starts rolling, you get more and more, and it builds on itself.
It's all the guided outlets of the youthful entrepreneurial energy, right? You have SkyDeck, you have all the lean startup classes, lean launchpad, and entrepreneurship centers. And most students I talk to now, I think 20, 30 years ago, they'd want to go into investment banking. 10 years, 15 years ago, they'd say, I'm going to go into product at a big tech company. And now it's like, I'm going to start a startup. I'm here to find co-founders and start a startup. And that's really good for Berkeley, but it's also really good for society.
Yeah.
Right? Because the more startups we have, I think the better, because startups are basically applying technology and science to solve human problems.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I get this question a lot of saying like, wait, how is venture-backed startups Berkeley anyway? Right? like how is venture and funds and VC and is that really part of our mission? And here's the thing, it actually is literally part of our mission. If you look at UC's mission statement, first of all, the top line, and this should not be a surprise to anyone. Berkeley, major public university, there's a bunch of words up there, but it says providing long-term societal benefit. No surprise, right? Providing long-term societal benefit has been our mission forever. And then there's 3 ways of achieving that: teaching, research, and public service. And you still think like, well, okay, I don't see what the startups are, right? Teaching, I get. Research, I get. Yeah, this is the bedrock of the university. And public service, okay. But then if you look at the mission statement, and yes, I invite you to Google it, it actually says part of public service is translating scientific discoveries for the benefit of, it literally says California, for the benefit of Californians and the nation, right? I mean, so this is baked in from the beginning. The mission is, we're doing the teaching, we're doing the research, but really the next step is get it out, right? And the many ways, you can license it and you can sell it to different companies, but many times it's starting a company is the way to get it out of the institution.
And how do you guys handle the tech transfer and the patents and the IP? I think Stanford historically has even taken equity in some of these startups and things like that. Yeah, tell us about that.
Yeah, so it is common. I think most universities will take equity through the patent license agreement. It's going to be one of the terms that's typically negotiated. And so we're doing that, and we're doing it more. I mean, so if you've heard Chancellor Lyons speak recently, he'll be speaking about the financial cylinders for financial thriving. Taking equity in Berkeley startups is a major part of it. So we're already getting equity through license agreements, but we can also get equity through starting companies ourselves, through a venture studio model and an entrepreneurship in residence model. We can get equity through collaborations with industry if a IP is created and we have a joint venture. I mean, so there's a bunch of different really creative ways. You're not going to believe. I think the idea was it was a 12-cylinder engine, like a gas engine, right? 12 the financial cylinders. But we keep thinking of other ways to take equity in early stage companies, and now it's a very awkward 17-cylinder engine, which I don't think is good. Maybe a bit unbalanced.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And what's exciting about that for the Berkeley community is when you have all these equity stake over the long term, that those funds flow back into Berkeley.
It can be huge, yeah.
And it's a nonprofit, right? So I mean, all that equity is tax free, flows right back into the programs, resources, faculty that fuels more entrepreneurship because you start realizing like, oh, this stuff works.
Yeah.
Taking the IP and getting it out there and creating businesses around it works. And it is kind of the best way to create value in the world is like either finding new discoveries, right? That's the research part, or like creating a business around those things, right?
Yep.
And going and selling it to the world so you can solve people's problems. And so, yeah, this kind of feeds back and creates a feedback loop in the system.
It does.
Where
yeah.
As this equity starts flowing back in on these exits, you're like, okay, well, we got a bunch of extra cash here. Let's go do more of what's been working.
Exactly.
Which is really exciting.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's amazing.
And we're really leaning into this, so I think Berkeley is indeed unusual that we have 6 affiliated funds, VC funds that are investing in companies that are coming out of SkyDeck, companies that are coming out of different programs on the campus, where part of their mandate and legally it's baked into their legal documents is they're sharing the GP carry with the campus. I mean, so they're part of the campus even if they're legally separate because they're invested in our startups. And so this, what we call the shared carry funds, has become something that a lot of other universities are taking notice of and thinking about, and they want to do themselves. And the thing is, we may be the first to have done it, but we're also, very, very, we're open to share the model, right? Share the documents. Right. And a lot of these are being set up at the different, so there's 10 University of California campuses. The other UC campuses want to do this too. And so we're helping them do it.
What do you think of, advice like Peter Thiel would give people to drop out of school and do a startup? It seems that Berkeley is saying, no, don't drop out of school. Just do it here and get your degree at the same time.
Yeah, I would do the startup afterwards. Right. I would still get the degree. I mean, yes, there's obviously success stories like Mark Zuckerberg. And
sometimes it's so compelling you should probably drop out.
Steve Jobs, right?
Yeah. This thing's taking off. It's doubling every day. And you need to go work on it. I get it.
It's pretty rare. It's almost never the case.
Right.
So it is funny. I used to look at all the applications to SkyDeck, at least on the BioTrack, and there was always a number of undergraduate teams who said they were full time, even though they were still in school. But they said that they're full time on their startup. And what I realized is that I think a lot of people have this misunderstanding that full time means 40 hours a week, and they think I can just work on my startup in the evening and on the weekends. But no, full time is 168 hours a week.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what we expect. I don't know. Maybe there's some exceptions, but it seems almost impossible to have a full course load and start a startup. Although I just learned recently that an undergraduate team that went through my I-Corps program. I-Corps is Lean Startup, but just run by National Science Foundation. A rare undergraduate team. Normally we don't take undergrad teams just because historically that they haven't been as focused as other teams in the program. But this one seemed different. So it's a company called Code Blue, run by a Berkeley undergrad, computer science undergrad, technology to detect strokes when they're happening. But basically, for example, if I'm having a stroke right now, my computer is behind the scenes like alert, alert kind of thing, right? Because you have my camera on. They went on, first of all, they blew it out of the water in the I-Corps program. Really impressive. Went on to win the whole Big Ideas contest, which is a social sector startup contest across a number of UC campuses. And beyond this, they've now entered clinical trials at UCSF for this tech, but the team is still full-time undergrads. Actually, the CEO is graduating early, accelerated her studies at Berkeley so she can do nothing but Code Blue when she graduates. I just talked to her last week.
Wow.
Amazing, right? So there are exceptions, right? But still, I would recommend that you get the degree.
And how does the launching of the EIR program kind of dovetail into this?
I guess taking a step back, I run a fellows program for PhD students and postdocs who are interested in venture and entrepreneurship. And part of that program is they do deal scouting or tech scouting, looking across the campus for things that are potentially commercializable. And that's been super popular and they've loved it. And we found some interesting stuff. I also run a program called the Venture Grant Program out of my center, where we are, again, soliciting applications, mostly from faculty, but from labs, where we say, hey, we're going to help you build a company from this idea. So the fellows are looking for tech. The venture grant applicants are saying, we have tech, we want to start a company. We've started 5 biotech startups through these programs. Consistently, what we're missing, though, is that a faculty-founded startup as a faculty member at the head who's not going to leave their job, right?
Right.
We see this all the time. And so almost, one of the first things that they need is they say, hey, I need some help here. I need somebody to run this. And it's always been an ad hoc struggle, we're always like kind of casting about and finding people who have time and sort of helping them on the fly. And one of them actually used a recruiting firm, which was very successful, but it was an unusual way to do it. So we thought, what if we had somebody who was just a genuine expert, sort of like had experience in startups before and was between them, classic entrepreneur in residence, where we have them join us for 6 months, 1 day a week. And their goal is at the end of the program, they will have found something to commercialize. I mean, with the idea that, they're going to be thinking about this, at least 40 hours a week or 40 hours a month, where, hopefully at the end of the program, they'll have something to launch if they're successful. But the great thing is, because we have the venture grant program where we already have a framework for launching stuff, and we have the fellows program where we have a framework for PhD students, postdocs for like helping scout deals, that they can all just work together. Yeah.
Love that.
Anyway, experiment.
Any last
a pilot for 2025.
Love that. What's any advice that you have for aspiring entrepreneurs seeking to leave a university with a company or a startup?
Of course, I think we all know the number one reason that startups fail is because you're building something that not enough people want. But I mean, the stats show that, right?
Fundamental, yeah.
Yeah. And so I think that's the trap that, just statistically, most people fall into. They're like, hey, I love my tech. It's so cool. Somebody's bound to want it, right? And I think a lot of people just rush off and head in that direction without really testing the market waters, but we have programs to do it. So my Haas MBA class, which is called Lean Transfer, which is a class for MBA students and other grad students, to get them so they know the lean startup methodology to understand if there's a there for the commercialization potential. But then the I-Core program and other things, and you don't even have to take a class. I just taught a session yesterday at SkyDeck around best practices for customer discovery. If you implement it and you do it right, you can either kill the idea or pivot to something where there's actually a market for it before you rush off and leave school, leave academia,
How do
whatever
these
it is.
students know? So they're going through the motions of the customer discovery process. Like, how do they know when they have something? What's that kind of aha moment that you teach?
Yeah, so it's interesting. So I teach a 100 interview version of this class. So these lean startup customer discovery classes are based around interviews, right? They're interviews with, they call them customer interviews, but they're not really necessarily people
like market
who
interviews.
buy the product.
Market discovery. Yeah.
Stakeholder interviews. Anyone who can affect whether the solution is adopted interview. And it's amazing, actually, when you have somebody go through a process like this and they do a bunch of stakeholder interviews, market interviews in a short period of time, like magic. They come in around interview 40 or 50 and say, all right, we were wrong. Like it's weird that it takes that many
40 or 50 interviews,
and then it just gets better from there.
So they realize that the idea they had about the market, about the solution, about the problem is wrong. Their hypothesis was incorrect.
Yep.
And through 40 or 50 interviews, they've realized like it's actually this other thing.
It's something else. Right.
Yeah.
And maybe it used to be in the NSF program, the National Science Foundation program, we would make teams stand up at the end of 100 interviews. We don't do this anymore, but we'd make them say go or no go, like for their idea. Fully half of them. So these are mostly academic teams coming in thinking they've got something, right? This is the reason they're doing the class, is because they want to learn how to commercialize it. But they would stand up and half of the teams would say no go, right? Which from our perspective was a win, right? Like, but I mean, this is better. You'd better not spend another year on this if you can just very quickly say, yeah, this is not, our time is better spent somewhere else, right? Here's the thing. As instructors in the program, the other half that were a go, fully half of the goes probably should have been a no-go. Right? It was just that the teams didn't recognize it.
That's amazing. Well, why don't we wrap up with a rapid fire?
Yep, of course.
What book has had the most significant impact on your career?
Yeah, so okay, good. It's a good question. And this is one of those things where if somebody's not read the book, it's the Dale Carnegie book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, which is a 90-year-old
has a funny
book.
title. Yeah,
it's got a title that sounds rather manipulative, right? It sounds like it's a tricky sales book or something, right?
There are some sales tricks in it.
There are some, but yes.
Give people a fine reputation to live up to and things like that.
There's some of that, right? But fundamentally, it's actually just understanding the importance of showing interest in other people. Like that's it. Like, I mean, and this is, so I have a daughter who's 18, just off to college. This is the one thing so we've actually listened to this book in the car a couple times, just like on audiobooks. It's the thing that I wanted her to know most going off to college, is that the importance of just being interested in other people is
what drives them, what motivates them.
It's like magic, right?
Yeah.
And so I was really bummed that I didn't, this is one of those things when I don't know if I read it. I think I've listened to it in the car a number of years, probably 10 years ago. I thought, I can't believe I'm just reading this now or listening to it now, because I would have wanted to know all this in college. Yeah.
That's around the time I listened to it, was kind of either senior year of college or just out of college, because I was in sales,
Yep.
No other jobs. 2003.
Yeah.
I took a sales job, and that was like required reading,
Was it? Okay.
What about a mentor or role model you looked up to?
Yeah. So I've had a bunch. The most recent being, of course, Rich Lyons. Like he's, I reflected, I had to give a toast and roast for him too, actually, when he got his new job. And I had to reflect and look back and realize that I worked with him closely for 3 years, which meant that I had a weekly meeting with the guy for for 3 years, which is what, 150 meetings. And you would think I would have learned something, right? I mean, he is a real leader, and he's now moved to the top position at a major university. And yeah, I learned a ton in those 3 years. It was fantastic.
What's your favorite innovation in life sciences?
So the one that I like to tell people about the most, because this is the team that came out of my venture grant program led by the chair of bioengineering here at Berkeley, a very unusual innovation, basically a medical superglue that allows you to glue, this is the part that's different, wet guts together, right? Because every medical superglue to date, like in the history of medical adhesives, has not been able to adhere wet surfaces, right? But of course, inside the body, it's all wet, right? And so this is coming out of Berkeley. They found a way to really, truly adhere wet surface together, including human tissue. So yeah, super excited about that. Oh, and it's called asparaglue because the main ingredients is actually derived from the asparagus plant.
Wow, amazing.
Right. And I've asked, and I said, does it smell like asparagus? And they said, it does a little bit, yeah.
Yeah. Does it make my pee smell?
Exactly, right. Yep.
Describe UC Berkeley in one word.
Yeah, easy. Changemaker. So we actually have the trademark on it, Berkeley Changemaker. We have a series of undergraduate, not just a series, but 40 Changemaker courses on the campus that share a common theme: critical thinking, collaboration, and communication. I teach one of them. So Berkeley Changemaker Human Health is my course, undergraduate course at Haas, where 25% of Berkeley undergrads have taken at least one Changemaker course. And you'd think, oh, this is like we're indoctrinating all these students in entrepreneurship. But we're not. So these are not entrepreneurship courses. But the thing is, we're giving basic framework and tools for anyone to think like an entrepreneur, which just is valuable across the board, no matter what field you're in. So in my class, Changemaker Human Health, the teams, 75 students, break up into 15 teams of 5. They're given an area of interest that they're interested in exploring. Frankly, it's a public health class, so some of them are thinking about how come we don't have universal health insurance coverage. And they do a customer discovery project around it, and then come out of the class knowing what the problem is, what's been tried before, what are potential solutions, which is really what an entrepreneur thinks about, right?
Right.
We're giving them those tools and framework for something that's really not entrepreneurship, but adjacent.
What was your first job?
So yeah, I was a dishwasher at a Sizzler, but this is in high school.
I guess my first job was probably delivering newspapers or selling out of a magazine door to door. But it wasn't really a job, like a wage job. I was picking spinach in 7th grade summer.
Oh gosh, okay.
Yeah, that was backbreaking, like literally.
Yeah.
Just huddled over, just grabbing the hybrid spinaches and killing them. Anyway.
Yeah, that would be. All right, so I had it better in the Sizzler, although it was pretty steamy.
McDonald's. I worked at McDonald's. I was like
Okay.
when I was 16. So that dovetails into the last question. What's one piece of advice you would give to your younger self?
Yeah. So what? I thought about this a bit, and what I think it is that up until even when I left Bio-Rad, which was 2015, which is not even 10 years ago, I'll admit I was sometimes kind of a nervous presenter. Like this is one of those things where I wasn't completely comfortable with it. And I taught myself to the basics, sometimes by mimicking other people, how to give a good, interesting, sort of entertaining presentation. It's important to be entertaining. And then I just practiced it, right? So this is one of those things where if I could go back and tell my 20-year-old self, I'm like, you know what would really help? You need to learn how to give a good presentation, and you can figure it out by practicing it. Yeah, that's it. It's a learned skill.
That's kind of what I tell my founders when they're pitching me. They're like, hey, you want to just have a conversation? I'm like, no. Pitch me. Give me the 10 or 15 minute pitch of your company, because you're going to be doing this constantly to raise money, to get people to join you on your crazy journey. I'm a big fan of presentation skills, like learning how to give the pitch and being good at that. Because fundamentally, eventually, all founders will become leaders, right? Or they are leaders, right? But fundamentally, like as the company grows and you get bigger and bigger rounds of capital, your
Yeah.
job becomes more leadership than it does kind of the nuts and bolts of the product and stuff, or sales or whatever. You're basically
Mm-hmm.
leading people. And
Yep.
a lot of that kind of quality comes through with your presentation skills.
Mm-hmm. Yep. True.
Where can folks find out more about you and LSAC and Berkeley entrepreneurship generally?
Yeah, so let me point out, if folks are interested in knowing what do we have for these entrepreneurship resources at Berkeley, super easy website, begin.berkeley.edu. So that's basically the front door for entrepreneurship on the Berkeley website, on the Berkeley campus. You can see there's a database there. You can slice and dice it based on stage and interest and that kind of thing. Hundreds of resources on there. So this goes beyond just the 55 organizations
count,
that yeah. There's other things on there.
Right.
But yeah, so begin.berkeley.edu. That will take you, if you're clicking the right links, to my website, the Life Sciences Entrepreneurship Center, the main innovation and entrepreneurship website. I work for the Vice Chancellor for Research. We have some resources on our site, but Begin would be the place to begin.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Darren, for coming on. Really enjoyed it.
Yep. Thank you, Brian. This was fantastic. Appreciate that.